Thank you all for rising. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and immediately following a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This is a public meeting and it is being recorded. Since the last time we met, I'm only aware of 2 times, well, really one event that the commissioners were all together at, and that was the County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania. I don't recall speaking to either commissioner, though, the entire time, so I don't know if either of you have anything else to add. And then there were some emails exchanged regarding the budget, but all of that will be coming out in public meetings, so I'm not concerned about that. Anything that I missed? Okay. Any correspondence received since the last meeting that you want to raise? Hearing none, I'd like to open the public hearing for CDBG program proposals. And for that, I will turn it over to Lori Dunlap.
Just read the resolution.
Okay.
The reason we're having a public meeting on this budget modification, which sometimes we can do it without that, is because we are deleting a project and then adding some new ones to this fiscal year. What we are deleting was, there was the First and Hall Street water line in Sheffield that we used older CDBG monies to fund, so we ended up with $90,000 that we had set aside for that. We paid for it with older money in an effort to keep money spending in a timely fashion. So we have that left over, and then I had proposed a housing rehab program in Youngsville Borough for our 2016 funding when I did not have, I needed an extra project to do our application, and so I suggested to them that we do a housing rehab program, and they said, okay. I said, we only have $96,000. We'll probably only be able to do 2 houses. And they're like, okay. So I've been working on this, setting up this program for the last couple of years. Came down to the point where we actually bid out to have project delivery services done. EOC got the award to do that. And in discussing back and forth with DCED, we have to not only have the lead-based paint tested, but it has to be by a certified person and by a certified, and work done by a certified lead-based paint trained contractor. There are none in Warren County. And so, with so many roadblocks in that project and the funding not being able to go so very far for the amount of money that we have decided collectively with Youngsville Borough not to do the rehab program. Instead, they have asked for some funds to demolish a commercial building on East Main Street. And so that is on the table, hasn't been approved yea or nay, but so they were fine with switching out money for something else for them or not. So I have about $180,000 from 2018 that is redirected in an effort to spend the money within the time frames we're given. So I propose that we put $175,640 into the Center Street Stormwater Project, which was already an approved project for 2017, hence that will leave money extra in 17. And also the RDA has pretty much run out of money, so I proposed moving $10,469 into the RDA for their blighted property program. That's the gist of it.
I have a question. The property that Youngsville Borough is interested in...
I believe it's 1 East Main, and it was some sort of a manufacturing building.
Who owns that building?
I don't know.
The borough?
No.
Okay.
The borough does not own it. It's privately owned. I don't know if it's the owner has come forth and said he will put money towards it also. I believe it is physically falling down as we speak, and they're very nervous about it.
I think I
Yeah,
know what
there
building
are-
you're talking about.
Someone.
Yeah, there are bricks in the street.
It's like, do you know the name of the building?
I don't
I
know
don't want
the
to call it the
only one.
ABC building, but it's something like that initials, and it was some sort of manufacturing plant that had been neglected and was falling down. So they have come and asked for help with that. If we do that, that will probably be out of 2017.
Are those funds usually typically to help individuals or municipalities?
Municipalities, so it could be part of removal of slum and blight. If the county were to use CDBG dollars to demolish it, we would probably put a lien on the property. All that we have to recover, if that building would be sold, would be the appraised value of the property, of the lot. But it's pretty much like all the rest of the slum and blight, that you really don't get your money out of what you put into it. It costs more to tear things down than anybody wants to pay.
Right.
So I believe that they were going to turn it over to the borough to own.
Okay.
Yep. That has not happened, as I believe. And so that's the process we're at.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you.
I have a question.
Disappointed.
On the RDA, you're giving them $10,469. Is there a chance that some of this money could increase that 10,000 because
No. I'm trying to remember the budget, but we can only put 30% of our funds towards RDA, and I believe we have something else. I have it in my mind right now, Joe, that was as much as we had that we could put towards that.
that could easily be spent just on one
Good.
demolishment? Price is not cheap to demolish. I just wondered, it's always looking for an extra money.
No, yeah, we're always looking for extra money that we can use for the RDA.
Yes.
Hard to find.
Very good. Any other public comments or questions? We'll be voting on the resolutions in the regular public meeting. Hearing nothing else, I'd ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second. The motion is to close the public hearing. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Public comment. Is there anything that the public would like to bring before the commissioners today? Mr. Scully.
I have one question. Maybe I misread this in the paper. What is a 1/3 increase you're talking about? Could you explain the 1/3 to me? Because when I deal with raises, we don't deal in fractions. I'm a little confused there.
Certainly. We had an independent third party do a study of all 6th class counties earlier this year. I think it was concluded in March. And that independent third party was Nancy J. Hess and Associates. And what they determined was that there were several non-union director-level positions within the county that were underpaid compared to the averages from the other 6th class counties. So when we went to determine what pay increases we should give for 2019, we took the difference between what Hess said was the average and what we currently pay, and we divided that into 3. Ideally, in my mind, over the course of the next 3 years, we would increase those employees so that they get to the median that the Hess study recommended. Now, that is not binding. That is certainly not something that the salary board voted on for the coming years. But I believe that it would conform with what the past practice has been with the union. We did a similar study done in-house, but using the same data source in order to determine what the union employees should be making according to the 6th class averages. And we stepped that over a 4-year period. So ergo, we're doing it 3 years with non-union, a third, a third, a third, and with union members, a quarter, a quarter, a quarter, a quarter. That said, the reason that we went with a third for the non-union employees was because the union employees started in January of 2018, whereas the non-union employees are starting in January of 2019. Is that clear?
Yeah, I understand. But I still would just like to see you do percentages.
Well, if we did percentages, then it wouldn't raise those people up to where the study suggested they should be.
It's not an across the board like uniform system because some were farther below than others.
Municipalities use that survey that they do, but in all honesty, I bet we base ours on what we feel our people are entitled, and it's none of any other municipality or borough to question how we give our people the raise. That's the judgment of the Board of Supervisors, and that survey that DSAT puts out for municipalities, you compare our township with another township, they may have less, they may have more. But I just thought maybe you did percentage. The 1/3 threw me off. Now that you explained it, that's the county's problem. I still think it'd be better to use 1, 2, 3, or 4, or maybe 5% raise, which nobody gets a 5% raise.
It's important to note that a handful out of the group got a third to the average of what most of them got 2%, or a huge group got 2%. So the bottom line was like 2%. I mean, it's important to note that the ones that got a third are dramatically down from what is. I mean, they're so low paid in comparison to the rest of the state, like it's 6 last counties, that we're having issues with retaining people and keeping people employed here. So that's part of addressing this as well.
Could I make one more suggestion?
Certainly.
When you decide the people that you hire, you have a lot of people that, to my knowledge, that are year by year employees. In other words, and if I may use your clerk as an example, every year you renew her for 1 year for the convenience of the Board of Commissioners. And I get around the courthouse. I would highly recommend that people like your clerk get maybe a 2 years so that they can breathe a little easy, and they all do a good job. I could care less if they do 1 year, but I think it would put rest to a lot of people in your courthouse that you say her job is good for 2 years.
It's good for 2 years, Pam.
The county code disallows that. The solicitor and the chief clerk. So we're not going to be able to do that because the county code explicitly states that the chief clerk and the solicitor have to be appointed at the first meeting in January of every year. So we can anecdotally give that assurance, but we cannot officially give that assurance. And as for your comment about the general across-the-board raises or giving people what you think is best, I would love to go in that direction. However, employees feel that they are worth more than, sometimes I should say, feel that they are worth more than the state average, and so we could be all over the map giving people random raises, whereas in this way I can look an employee honestly in the eye and say, your pay is based off of an average. So even though I personally would love to give you a $20,000 raise, I can't.
Okay. Thank you for the information.
Any other public comments? Very good. On the agenda today, we have 2 resolutions related to CDBG as discussed in the public hearing. Calling of the bond, which I assume the fiscal director will be discussing. GIS data, and quick discussion about the 2019 budget. Well, potentially quick. Does that agenda look agreeable? Did I miss anything?
I thought we were amending the agenda to remove the budget discussion.
It was my understanding that you wanted to bring something to the table.
No, that's fine.
Well, we don't need to, if we get to that point and we don't want to discuss anything, fine. Minutes from November 14th, did they meet with your approval?
Yes.
Fiscal report?
We have the fiscal report in front of you. General fund has about $3.2 million in it currently. The Erie bank account, $200,000. As you know, the TAN was paid off back last month. God, that went fast. And we have submitted all the paperwork for the 2019 TAN to legal counsel, so that should be sometime in next month. We should get the paperwork for you folks to sign off on for the 2019. But it's all in place and all that good stuff. So that's all I have on that.
Any questions for the fiscal director? Could I have a motion to approve the agenda of the minutes from November 14th in the fiscal report?
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Public comment? All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The agenda and the minutes, the fiscal report passed. There's no old business on the agenda. The first two items on the agenda are resolutions 3,117 and 3,118. Those are for revisions to the 2015 CDBG program and 2016 CDBG program, respectively. Do you have any questions for Lori Dunlap? Hearing none, I'd ask for a motion to approve these two resolutions.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Any public comment? All those in favor of approving the two resolutions, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Calling of the bond. Fiscal Director Hearn, would you like to explain what you've set before us?
What I emailed you earlier this week, last week or the week before, we had additional monies transferred over to the bond or the debt fund. So now we have enough to pay the remaining principal of $675 on the bond. With the proper notice we need to give, if we approve that, if you just authorize me to process this payment today, then we can get this bond paid off by December 31st. And I did get the redemption fee waived as well. So I just need a motion for that.
I would like to comment on that. In working on the budget, I discovered that in our bond debt, Erie bond debt bank account, that we had $767,000. So that made me start thinking, what bonds do we have left to pay, and how much are those bonds to retire them? So I didn't have my information at home, so I remembered that there's a website online that all municipalities and government entities are required to upload their data in regard to bonds. And I was able to locate our bond and found that to retire that bond and call it, it would take $675,000. So knowing that we had $767 sitting in our bank account, that left us roughly $92,000 to spare. So I brought this to the attention of the commissioners and Eric and asked them if we could please call the bond early. We did make an $8,100 payment, I believe, a few months back. It must have been in May, and that interest payment actually carries us through to the end of December. So if we call the bond now and retire that, we'll have no more interest to our taxpayers, and we will be out of bond debt. So
Slight change. The $8,100 we're paying now goes through the end of the year.
Through the end of December.
So that still $8,100 savings for 2019.
Correct. Correct.
Not this year.
Right. We would not have any further interest to pay.
Right.
And that's a savings, a huge savings to our taxpayers. So as I stumbled upon that, I was very pleased at what I found, and I feel very pleased that our board here is willing to take that on and retire that debt.
Can I take that as a motion?
Yes.
I'll second.
Now, any discussion?
Looking forward to being debt-free. At least for a little bit.
Any public comment? All those in favor of the motion, which is to call the bond debt, please state aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone, for your hard work. Next on the agenda is the County GIS agreement with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I brought this up at the board meeting, or excuse me, the work session on Monday. In short, this agreement would be with the Commonwealth to exchange the county's GIS data with the Commonwealth. The objective is to benefit the public in general, including but not limited to areas of economic development, public safety, and environmental management. So DCNR, DCED, PEMA, etc. would be accessing and using our data collaboratively. There is a disclaimer that the data is as is, therefore indicating that if our data is messed up and they use it, we're not culpable for any mistakes. And it can be terminated, but anything that we share with the state would be, shall we say, theirs. We can't rescind their use of something we've already given them, but we could terminate the agreement going forward at any time. I do not believe the solicitor had a chance to review this, but as it is very cut and dried and many counties in Pennsylvania have already approved the exact same agreement, I am comfortable with passing it. If the two of you are not comfortable with passing it, I would understand wishing to table it, however. With that, I would make a motion to approve the multi-party geospatial data sharing agreement between Warren County and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
You had mentioned that you attended a educational session at CCAP in
Yes.
regard to this.
Yes.
How many other counties would you say have signed on to this?
The map that they showed, I think, indicated probably a third to a half, but I don't know exactly.
Were most of them in our area, northwestern Pennsylvania?
I would say it was speckled throughout the state.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Commissioner Eggleston?
No.
Any public comment?
Would there be a reason why they wouldn't share other kinds?
No, I don't think so.
It's difficult to say how new this program is, too. Like, a lot of times with these, it takes a little time for everybody to adopt it. There's some apprehensive about collaborating with the state on things, so that can be an issue, too.
I think the main concern really would be if the state asks for data and we have limited resources in terms of human capital to spend on relaying the information was probably more of the concern. But from my perspective, the way this is drafted, if we have a constraint like that, it just gets put on the back burner. It's voluntary. Mr. Scully?
I think if you do some research, you're going to find out the more smaller rural counties are willing to share that. And when you get up around Lancaster, Philadelphia, they're not so agreeable to it. Why, I don't know. But the smaller rural counties all are for it, and I think it's a good idea to share the information with the state. It can help us all.
Thank you.
I would just quickly add that it's important to note that in an emergency management situation, this data is used. So if there was a massive flood or some kind of issue like that, they would use it in the same way that our first responders use it. That's my assumption, correct?
Yes, and GIS data is what makes up our computer-aided dispatch system.
Yeah. So I think that having them have that data, especially in light of some of the floods that we've had and some of the other issues, I think it's really important.
Very good. Anything else? The motion before us is to approve the agreement between the Commonwealth and the county related to GIS data. All those in favor, please state aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Now, 2019 budget. I had a couple thoughts. We were originally, well, let me back up. So first of all, in previous years, previous memory, there have not been open budget hearings. This year was the first year that we had allowed sunshine in, so to speak, and had budget hearings. The commissioners have not met separately, either in 2 or 3, in order to talk about the budget. And instead, we have empowered our fiscal director to present us with a budget with some input, I believe, individually, but not as a board. Today, we had hoped to talk through a wish list of proposals and discuss any tension points within the budget in order to have it ready for release on Monday. However, there are still some things that need to be tweaked in the fiscal office, and so tomorrow and Friday the fiscal staff will be doing that. They will be coming up with a refined budget which they will share with the commissioners. Due to the fact that one or two of the commissioners will not be able to attend Monday's work session, what I'm asking to do is set a special meeting on the 5th in order to handle any discrepancies. So between the time that the fiscal office sends us the budget and I suppose Monday or Tuesday might sound reasonable, please email Eric any recommendations that you have. And then if the budget does not accommodate for everything that we would like to change, or the fiscal director does not agree with it, then he will bring it to us on that special meeting on the 5th at 2 p.m., correct? And we can hash it out then, give the fiscal director that final, should we say, nod on what we would like to release as the budget, and then the fiscal director will make those changes, print it off that evening, and it will be on public display either end of day of the 5th or early on the 6th, so that we have the full 20 days before the vote on the 26th. Does that sound in agreement with everyone?
Sounds good to me.
Now, if you wanted to bring, I know I really only have one thing that I want to have in the budget, which has to do with beyond what you've already done, and that is for sunshine purposes. I would like to do the entrepreneurial learning initiative training with a group of 12 employees of the county. Basically, it's teaching good work habits, I suppose, to find entrepreneurial solutions. And the cost of the training would be somewhere in the ballpark of $3,500 for one group. I'd also like to see if we couldn't do it at Human Services as well. That might increase it to $6,000 or so. But I would expect that to probably go in their budget, possibly even the fund that you used for the Human Services Summit. So that's the only thing that I'm aware of right now that I'd like to be seen added in. If that's possible, it'll be somewhere in the ballpark of $4,000. Either of the other commissioners have anything they want to add?
I would like to say that going down line through line on the budget, I have numerous questions. So I don't know how we address those.
You meet with the fiscal director
So would
individually.
you like to meet today?
Absolutely.
Because
Anytime you like.
I really have a lot of questions and concerns. Our proposals, I would like to present those potentially today if we can.
Feel free.
Well, could I please refer to my list?
Sure. Okay, we don't have to be out of here till 1, right?
Well, then mine will be quick.
Yeah, so we have all the time.
I don't have much.
Okay.
Okay, so I have 6 items that I'd like to propose. So when I looked over the budget figures and looked at our dedicated bond debt, and I discovered the difference that we have in the checking account as it relates to paying off our bond debt, we discovered $92,089. I would like to propose that those additional funds, once they're retired, be transferred from that Erie debt fund to the general fund and be used as a contingency line in our budget.
Have you researched whether that's okay to do since it was collected as bond?
Yeah, I believe that money can be transferred from that bank account to the general fund. It was tax revenue.
And do you recall, was a portion of that anticipated savings going to go to cover the flyover program?
No.
I know something related to, but maybe it was the interest saved.
Right, it was last year.
Okay.
Yes, yes. That was last year.
Okay.
So with retiring the bond debt, that will zero out the county's bond debt, obviously. And that's equivalent to 1 mil of real estate tax. So currently our property tax millage is set at 20.5, with 1 mil collected as dedicated bond debt, which then equals 21.5. mills combined. So my second proposal would be to take that 1 mil as a tax decrease to the taxpayers with the retirement of the bond debt. When the bond is retired, that 1 mil will net zero. So I advocate that this millage not be added to the property tax millage for 2019, which would provide a tax decrease to the taxpayers. I'm also, number 3, advocating on behalf of my board that I do sit on, the Cooperative Extension Board. They've made a request for an additional $6,750 in their budget this year, which would allow them to add a part-time master gardener coordinator position. Number 4, I propose canceling the contract with Long & Nyquist, saving the taxpayers $60,000 a year. Number 5, I propose cutting the funding to the WCCBI of $40,000 a year due to the fact that they do not conduct consistent open meetings for the public to attend. We need greater transparency from within this organization. And number 6, I propose level funding of all the external agencies that we currently fund. This means no increase in any funding. And those are my proposals.
Very good. Your first one, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th are straightforward and make sense. What I don't understand is, based on the fact that there is currently no margin and the budget was built by the fiscal office with the understanding of having 21.5 mils in tax, where are the additional cuts going to be in order to make up the difference?
But we were, because when I talked to Eric the other day about that, we have on our very first line of revenue, we have real estate property tax. On the second line is the dedicated bond debt.
Right.
And that figure would then move to, in the budget, the line 1.
If you folks agree to transfer the millage, it would just...
And you have included that, correct?
That's included.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it is included.
Well, it's included as revenue.
Right.
Right.
You folks have to tell me that you're going to not have that, but it's going to still be, the money will still be coming in, it'll just be
Right.
at the top line.
That's right. And I would like to see, instead of the money continue to flow, to retire that bond debt and give that millage of tax as a tax return or a tax break to the taxpayers.
Right. So at the end of the day, to be clear, you want the 2019 millage rate to be 20.5.
Correct.
Not 21.5.
Correct.
Fiscal Director Hearn, based on the current budget that you've drafted that you sent us today,
That includes the millage.
that includes 21. That's
Correct.
built on 21.5. So again, I asked Commissioner Morrison, where are you going to cut that 1 mil of expenses?
That would have to come line by line, and we'd have to look at that. But we did have that, we were collecting it all along. I think that we should look at giving the money back to the taxpayers.
I would just say that I think that in a very simple fashion is a wonderful idea. I think the challenge is that, just generally practically to do that. I think my point being is practically to do it, you're going to have to find $420,000 of cuts in the budget. If we were going to do that, like if that was a decision that was made by a majority of the board, then technically today we should scrap what we have and then have a discussion about something that's going to be dramatically different than what the fiscal director has already worked up to this point.
Can I counter on that? We would be saving, as per my proposal, $60,000 a year on the Long and Nyquist, $40,000 on WCCBI. We have a definite, I'm not sure it's definite, but I would assume we have an overture of over $200,000 at the end. And that's what you had written to me as well, Jeff.
I don't know where you would get
So you updated your
$200,000.
figures today. So I believe...
It's an ongoing process,
Yeah.
for sure.
I guess my point is that I think that each commissioner has interests in this budget, and this is why I've been advocating for everybody reviewing the budget, making their own edits to it, and then sending proposals to the other commissioners for review, and then presenting them at a meeting. Like, that requires a great deal of work, but that's what you're going to need to do in order to come up with an additional Even if you got rid of Long Nyquist and WCCBI, I mean, you're still talking at least a couple $100,000 that you're going to have to cut out of the budget.
Right.
And,
Well, I look at it this way. If we're not able to refund our taxpayers that money or give them a tax break, then we should consider some percentage of that mill.
Okay, I think that it's possible that we retire some portion of it, but I think it's a bit unfair to send the fiscal office back now on Wednesday, the 28th, and anticipate a couple $100,000 of cuts anyway that we were not anticipating when we did all vote together on union increases of about $100,000, non-union increases of about $50,000, Motorola agreement, which is somewhere in the ballpark of $180,000 a year. So it's a great talking point, and it sounds nice, but I don't know where those cuts are going to come from.
Eric,
And if we were planning on that, then we shouldn't have agreed to all the things we already did.
Eric, as per your assessment, what do you believe after you flush this all out? Are we in the black or are we in the red?
Well, my latest iteration has is balanced. So that's including the 405 that millage. So the vast majority of the budget is basically fixed. Salaries, heating, lighting, all that good stuff. It's the external entities that you have control over, and if you want to have contingency or not, contingency fund. I mean, I would recommend you have one. Any government should. I think that's a prudent step. There's like this year, you've had a lot of there's a lot of things that happen. That's why you need a contingency fund. So, I mean, it's not baked in to. You didn't have one last year, and you've had HVAC systems go, and they're running 25 or 30 grand a pop sometimes. So, based on that, it's going to require you. Like I said, most of the budget is what I'll call it fixed. I mean, you agree to union agreements and the salaries and benefits and all that stuff. The external entities you have flexibility on, like you suggested, and if you want to have a contingency account, but there are commitments like the Motorola, for instance, and things that you guys have committed to. So you don't have. Can it be done? Sure, it could be done. It just depends what choices you folks want to make.
I would like to comment to Commissioner Catherland saying that it's unfair to bring this to the table at this late date. I never saw any proposals from any commissioner until late last night from Commissioner Eggleston. So I know he has several proposals.
To be clear, I'm talking about weeks ago when the fiscal director
when I
emailed us.
I just discovered the bond debt could be retired.
The bond debt we just had money 2 weeks ago. We didn't have it before 2 weeks ago.
To be fair, the bond debt retirement is irrelevant.
It really
on
is.
On some level, I mean...
We knew that was going to happen. That's why we were able to negotiate the union agreements, the non-union agreements, Motorola. We have been anticipating that debt coming off of us for a couple years now.
So I'd just like to say that I have no problem with one of the commissioners proposing the concept of a tax cut if there is proper documentation to back up what that is going to involve. I think it's highly irresponsible to walk into a meeting and propose a tax cut when you have no way of paying for it or allocating or doing the time in order to do the work in order to explain what that is, because essentially what you're going to say is the other two commissioners are not nice people because they don't want to propose a tax cut. I want to propose a tax cut. We are doing the best we can in order to make sure that all the numbers line up. My recommendation would be, if you want to propose a tax cut, is to go through the budget line by line and then make a list of recommended cuts that these commissioners should vote on in order to do that. That's the only reasonable way to do it. That's going to involve a lot of work. It's going to involve making a lot of difficult proclamations as far as things that you're going to want to cut, because you're talking at least $200,000 on top of what you've already outlined even if we were comfortable with making those cuts. So my recommendation would be, again, to review the last document that the fiscal director has authored and sent to us, and then go through it line by line and then find the areas that you want to cut in order to accommodate what you're proposing.
Let's be clear. I didn't come here today to propose a tax decrease to our taxpayers, to not want to work with the board in that effort. That was the reason for my bringing it to the board, so that we can work toward that end. And I would propose that we do that.
I understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is I'm comfortable with what we've got here, okay? And I think Commissioner Cafferlin is comfortable, or at least close. Being comfortable with what we have. So what you're proposing is something totally different than what we have. It isn't a situation where we all kind of collectively decide, okay, we're going to work towards figuring out how to make this happen. It's you need to propose what you want to cut in order to make this happen, because I don't know that either one of us are comfortable with what you're discussing, at least at this point. And although you've mentioned this at different times, I haven't seen one concrete proposal yet from you on this whatsoever. So I have absolutely no idea what you're even alluding to as far as what...
Commissioner Eggleston, you sent me an email, and your belief was that we still were collecting the bond debt up until July of this year. So, and that's just not correct. So, I believe, we've been collecting this bond debt, and we should be looking at giving this tax break to the taxpayers.
I think that that's a wonderful sentiment. And in a world where those numbers line up, I would be doing cartwheels down the street.
And I believe that we can work toward that effort.
I believe that somebody should work towards that effort.
And I would gladly do that. And I have been doing that. I've proposed several cuts here. So
still have a few hundred thousand to go.
Don't even touch what you're discussing, generally speaking.
That's not correct.
Because there's going to have to be staff decreases.
That's not correct.
Then where will it come from?
That's why we need to establish that. But I believe that it can be done, and I believe that I was basing it off numbers that I had been given where there was excess funds left in the budget. So that today has changed as per Eric's new figures. So that is what I was basing that on. But I would be more than happy to go back through line by line of the budget and make more recommendations. I have worked on this budget tirelessly for the last 2 weeks, and I have every intention to follow through and continue doing so. And I will make every effort to do that on behalf of the taxpayers, to give them a tax break.
Okay, well, I guess we will await an email with that proposal.
I will work with Eric on that.
Okay. So, as it stands, the fiscal office will still... You're going to have to present two budgets then? One would be one with radical cuts?
The radical cuts is just not correct.
Hang on. So, let me rephrase. You'll have to present one budget with 20.5 mil and one with 21.5 mil? Is that going to be accurate?
Why don't we wait and see
if it's even feasible?
We get together and go through some of the questions she might have, and we can talk through it.
So just to backtrack, I sent an email yesterday to the commissioners that there were proposals that I was going to make at this meeting that involve different things that I'm interested in putting forth that I think are going to be a big help to the county. Okay. And we've been working through the budget on an ongoing basis for well over a month now to try to get all of the numbers to line up. It's important to note that there's been a lot of issue with trying to identify and make sure that all the numbers line up in the accounting system that we have. Over the past couple of years, we've identified multiple challenges with the accounting system that we have through AccuFund. As a result, there's a handful of numbers in what Eric Kern has put forth that are still under review in order to finalize them, to find out what the bottom line number is that we can work back from in order to have other proposals to put forth. I then sent an email today stating that I would not be making any proposals today, and that I think that it should still be reviewed for at least another week, so that we can then sit down in a budget hearing and then have a discussion about what our proposals are based on where every single number that we have is we feel 110% good on. Okay. Looking at the numbers as it stands today, one of the big reasons that I said I wasn't going to make a proposal is I think that we're probably at zero now. But again, there are some numbers that need to be worked through. We're 95% of the way. Okay. Now, I also sent an email stating that I believe that any discussion that we have about this publicly going forward, we should get the commissioner should send an email making proposals so that the other commissioners should be able to review them in a matter of time before a meeting, so that we can discuss them intelligently rather than kind of randomly just generally discussing topics that frankly we don't have the numbers to back up. And that's why to say that you can do one or two things right now today while we're sitting here, I just don't think is fair to anybody, because the numbers are not lined up yet. Are we there? Are we probably going to be there today, maybe tomorrow? But so that's my point.
Well, we still have some. Sorry, if I can.
Just one more quick thing. That's why I'm saying is when it comes to dramatic proposals that you're going to make in the budget, things that you're going to propose where you're talking about $100,000 to $200,000, whatever. I think that each commissioner needs to do work on their end as well in order to make sure that they feel comfortable proposing those numbers, rather than just kind of making general directives and then trying to figure out a way to make them work. So like I said, my recommendation to the other two commissioners is, aside from what Eric's proposed, if you have things that you want to change, put it in writing, send it to us, and then have us have the ability to review it. I don't think that we should have two budgets to approve. I think that there should be the budget that's generally put together, and if we have changes that we want to make from that budget, that we propose those changes to it.
Could I
Mr. Hearn
say something?
I was just going to say that doing a budget is a dynamic process, and literally this week we have new information, like the salary board from the salary board meeting two days
Yes.
ago. So and then there's one coming up in 2 weeks that I believe the salary board was going to make there's going to be some proposals. So there's always in a budget some actual historical good solid data, and then there's also some basic assumptions you have to make in some line items. But it is a very dynamic process, and when you have the history of 4 people sitting in this chair over the last 5 years or so, you have people that do things differently, you have things that define things differently and aren't consistent perhaps from one to the other. So all that has been, that's what I've been looking at and trying to figure out, is what people previously in different departments, what did they communicate, what they did not communicate, to come up with why they put this revenue line here or why they put this expense line here. So that has been an interesting process this year. But anyway, I just want to share, it's definitely a dynamic process, and it's literally it's changing daily.
Thank you.
Commissioner Morrison.
I appreciate it. Jeff, or Commissioner Eggleston, you proposed today to table our discussion on our proposals.
Mm-hmm.
Yet I'm hearing from the two of you that at this late date I'm proposing this. And you wanted to remove it from the agenda today, and you've scheduled a special meeting on Wednesday for us to present our proposals. You can't have it both ways. Am I jumping the gun and proposing it too soon, or am I proposing it too late?
Well, so a few things, and I'll try to keep this as brief as possible. First of all, I'd like to thank Eric Hearn for the work that he's done on this budget. It's important to note that Eric Hearn is our new fiscal director. This is the first year he's done the budget, which has been both a challenge and a benefit. It's been a challenge because obviously this is the first time he's worked on a budget like this for the government. Second reason that it's a good thing is that with fresh eyes, there are a lot of things that he's been able to dig up, as a part of that process. So that brings me to my second point, which is I feel that what we're going to produce is the most realistic budget that this county's ever had when everything's said and done, both revenue-wise and expense-wise. And that's the goal with this, is to have the most reliable, accurate, and honest budget that we can produce. And I think that's the goal here. So those are a couple things. The last thing in response to Commissioner Morrison's statement is that over the past 2 weeks, how many emails do you think I've sent on the budget?
Dozen.
And how many do you think I've sent?
Dozens of emails on evaluations on the budget, the numbers that are in it, proposals, and things that I think that should be done. I have not gotten a single proposal from Commissioner Morrison on
Your
the budget.
proposal came last night.
I've sent multiple emails about this for weeks, about how the budget's structured, where our revenue's coming from, dozens of emails, okay? So I would have expected that if we were going to have a discussion about legitimately retiring the bond debt and then converting it into a tax cut, that there would be a pretty detailed proposal to go along with that would show that that revenue can stand on its merits. I have not seen a single proposal from anybody.
Jeff, your proposal was all tax increases.
He didn't present those. He sent an
Yes,
email
well,
as ideas.
Your proposal was
I am not
increasing.
proposing a single tax increase
Well,
anywhere.
He didn't propose anything, and I proposed a $6,000 increase.
Okay.
Or whatever, 4. Not much.
Well, suffice to say, I look forward to finalizing this with the three of you over the next week.
Right, so to be clear, where we're at now is that Commissioner Morrison will be working with
Yes.
Eric Hearn to see if there are any ways that we can cut. And from my perspective, Eric is the single point of contact here. And if there are things that you think we need to hash out in a public meeting, then Eric, you keep that list of things that we need to make yes or no decisions on for the meeting on the 5th. But obviously your mandate is to craft a budget that you are comfortable with. So if we can agree to cuts, if you can agree to cuts presented from anybody, then fantastic. If there are ideas that you think have merit that you'd like to propose, or any of the commissioners propose, then you work it in, and ultimately it'll be your budget that we are reviewing on Wednesday. It's not going to be a Commissioner Morrison budget, a Commissioner Eggleston budget, or a Commissioner Kaplan budget. It'll be the fiscal office. Agreed?
Agreed.
Sounds fantastic.
Okay. Then with that, move on to the personnel report. We've had one hire since the last meeting. That was effective on the 14th. Tatiana Malis is now working for the district attorney's office as an ADA at a rate of $50,300 a year plus benefits. None others that I'm aware of. Could I have a motion to ratify the personnel transaction report?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve the personnel transaction report. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
And they pose the same sign. Motion carries. Anything else for the good of the order? Last chance for public comment. Mr. Scully.
I would like Commissioner Morrison to explain in detail, not today, she can send me an email or phone me, as to why she wants to eliminate $40,000, if I understood it correctly, from CBG.
No, WCCBI.
What?
WCCBI.
Oh, okay. All right. I will drop my question.
So we've all heard that one before. All right, if there's nothing else, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Ms. Oakner, second.
Motion is made and seconded. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned at 12:55.